The vote. The council chamber was silent, not the comfortable silence of meditation or respect. No, this was the silence that comes before an execution. The kind that makes you hold your breath because somewhere deep inside, you know something terrible is about to happen. Ambassador Jonathan Jacobs stood at the center of the circular floor, surrounded by hundreds of alien delegates. Above him, holographic representatives from species across the galaxy watched from their distant worlds. The architecture was designed to inspire awe. Crystal pillars that refracted starlight, floating platforms that defied gravity, walls that shimmered with the colors of 1,000 suns. Humanity had helped build this place. Jacobs had walked this floor for 23 years. He'd negotiated peace treaties on these stones. He'd celebrated alliances beneath these lights. He'd called many of these beings friends. Now they wouldn't meet his eyes. "Please," Jacob said quietly. His voice echoed in the vast space. "Reconsider." Chancellor Vexthor of the Draxian Collective shifted on his elevated platform. His scaled face remained impassive, but his third eye, and the one that betrayed true emotion, flickered with something that might have been shame. "The vote has concluded, Ambassador," Vexthor said. "The Council has spoken with a clear majority." "A majority bought with promises and threats," Jacobs countered. His hands trembled slightly. "You know this isn't right. You know it." Councillor Ithara of the Elysian Communion, a species humanity had saved from extinction during the Plague Wars, turned her luminescent face away. She had voted yes, to strip humanity of its council seat, to reclassify them, to brand them as cattle. The word hung in the air like poison. In galactic law, a cattle species designation meant one thing. You were no longer considered sentient by council standards. Your worlds could be claimed. Your people could be harvested. Your civilization could be consumed. It was a death sentence delivered with bureaucratic efficiency. "The humans have grown too powerful," someone muttered from the upper galleries. "Too numerous. They breed like parasites and demand equal representation. They hoard resources," another voice added. "Their colony expansion violates the territorial agreements. Lies, all lies, but effective ones." Jacobs looked up at the Thurkai delegation. The Thurkai, humanity's oldest allies, the first species they'd made contact with, the ones who'd sponsored Earth's Council membership 947 years ago. Ambassador Krekthar stood among them, his forearms folded across his chitinous chest. "Krekthar," Jacobs called out. His voice cracked. "Brother, please." For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in the Thurkai ambassador's multifaceted eyes. Regret, perhaps, or memory. The two of them had served together for decades. Their children had played together. They'd shared meals, stories, hopes for the future. Then Krekthar looked away. "The Thurkai Dominion has been promised sovereignty over the Epsilon and Delta quadrants," he said, his translator rendering his clicking mandibles into flat, emotionless words. "In exchange for our cooperation, we must think of our people's future." "We saved your people," Jacobs said. The words came out as a whisper. "When the Kreshavar invaded your homeworld, it was human ships that held the line. Human soldiers that died protecting your civilians. We bled for you." "And we are grateful," Krekthar replied, but his voice was hollow. "But times change. Alliances shift. You understand." Jacobs understood perfectly. Greed, fear, politics. The same poisons that had destroyed civilizations since the first species learned to lie. "Final sentencing," Chancellor Vexthor announced. "Humanity is hereby stripped of council membership, effective immediately. All treaties are voided, all territorial claims are forfeit. Classification: cattle species subject to resource acquisition protocols under galactic law." The chamber erupted in a mixture of applause and uncomfortable silence. Some species cheered. They'd already filed claims on human worlds, salivating at the resources they'd gain. Others said nothing, ashamed but complicit. Jacobs closed his eyes. Behind his eyelids, tears formed. But his hands had stopped trembling. Deep in his neural implant, the one all human ambassadors carried, a small quantum processor activated. It sent a single encrypted pulse through subspace, traveling faster than light, bouncing through relay stations that officially didn't exist. The pulse reached Earth in 4.3 seconds. From Earth, it spread to every human colony, every outpost, every hidden facility in Terran space. 3 words repeated across a network the Council had never discovered. Protocol Exodus initiated. "Take him away," Vexthor ordered, waving a clawed hand dismissively. Council guards, massive Krogan mercenaries in powered armor, stomped toward Jacobs. He didn't resist as they grabbed his arms. Let them think him broken. Let them think humanity was defenseless. As they dragged him toward the exit, laughter echoed from the Draxian delegation. Someone made a joke about Terran stakes. More laughter. Jacobs lifted his head one last time. "You've made a mistake," he said quietly. Vexthor sneered. "Threats, Ambassador? From a cattle species?" "Not a threat," Jacobs replied. His voice was steady now, calm, almost serene. "A fact. See, the thing about humans, we're very good at 2 things. And what would those be?" Vexthor asked mockingly. "Remembering who hurt us." Jacobs smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "And patience." The guards pulled him through the chamber doors. They sealed behind him with a resonant boom. In the silence that followed, nobody noticed the slight flicker in the Council's communication network. Nobody saw the micro-breach in their security protocols. Nobody detected the quantum probe that had been silently cataloging every delegate's biometric data, every ship signature, every defense grid schematic. The Council had been so focused on betraying humanity, they'd forgotten to watch their backs. High Counselor Vexthor returned to his private quarters after the session, his mind already calculating the profits from the new territorial acquisitions. His flagship, the Pride of Drax, a dreadnought 3 kilometers long, orbited nearby, ready to escort him home. He poured himself a glass of Velusian wine and activated his personal comm system to check fleet positions. The screen was blank. "Computer, status of my flagship," he commanded. "No vessel detected in designated coordinates." Vexthor frowned. "Run full system diagnostic." "Diagnostic complete. No errors detected, no vessel present." A cold feeling crept up his spine. He activated the emergency council frequency. Static, then cutting through the white noise. A voice, human, male, distorted by heavy encryption. "You betrayed us once." Vexthor's hand froze on the comm panel. "But you forgot something important about humanity." The lights in his quarters flickered. "We never leave debts unpaid." Every screen in his room activated simultaneously, showing the same image. A black flag with silver stars arranged in a pattern he didn't recognize. No, wait, he did recognize it. It was Terra's night sky, Earth's constellations, and beneath it text in a human language. Terra remembers alarms began screaming across the council station. Vexthor ran to his window and looked out into space. Where his flagship should have been, there was nothing. Not debris. Not wreckage. Nothing. 3 kilometers of warship had simply vanished. All across the council networks, emergency broadcasts erupted. Thurkai defense grid offline. "Elysian communication satellites destroyed!" Unknown contacts detected in 6 star systems. "Counselor Zarath's transport just disappeared from sensors." "They're everywhere. How are they everywhere?" Vexthor stared out at the stars, his 3 eyes wide with a fear he hadn't felt in 1,000 years. Somewhere in the darkness, humanity was moving and they were no longer asking for permission. End of part 1. The Reckoning. The council emergency session convened in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other, their translators creating a cacophony of panic in a dozen languages. Holographic displays showed star maps painted with red warning indicators. Entire sectors had gone dark. Communication relays destroyed, defense platforms offline, ships missing, and nobody knew how. Chancellor Vexthor stood at the center podium, his scales pale with stress. In the 72 hours since they'd voted to strip humanity of council membership, the galaxy had descended into nightmare. "Order," he roared. "I demand order." The chamber slowly quieted, though fear hung thick in the air. "What is our military status?" Vexthor demanded, looking toward Fleet Admiral Cross of the Xanthari Armada. Cross's mandibles clicked nervously. 37 capital ships have vanished without trace. Another 64 have been damaged. Damaged how? Their weapon systems have been surgically disabled. Main guns removed. Missile batteries extracted. But the crews were left untouched. And in each case, Cross hesitated. In each case, they left a message. "Show me." A hologram materialized above the chamber floor. It showed the interior of a Draxian battlecruiser, or what remained of it. The entire weapons deck had been carved out with precision that defied explanation, where massive plasma cannons should have been. There was only empty space and cauterized metal. On the wall, burned into the hull in meter-high letters, "You voted yes." "They're targeting every species that supported the cattle designation," Counselor Withara whispered. Her luminescent skin had dimmed to almost nothing. "They're systematically dismantling our militaries." "Impossible," Vexthor snapped. "Humanity has no fleet capable of this. We've monitored their military for centuries. They have defensive ships, colony vessels. Nothing that could—" "We monitored what they allowed us to see," interrupted a new voice. The chamber fell silent. An elderly Korthan walked slowly to the speaker's platform. Archon Velmos, one of the Council's oldest members, a species that had observed galactic politics for 10,000 years. When he spoke, people listened. "The humans are older than you think," Velmos said quietly. "Not as a species, but as a civilization that has known betrayal." "What are you talking about?" Vexthor demanded. "Did any of you ask yourselves why humanity was so eager to join the Council 900 years ago?" Velmos looked around the chamber. "Why they shared their technology so freely? Why they always advocated for peace even when war would have benefited them?" Silence. "Because they'd already learned the lesson we just taught them again," Velmos continued. "Before they reached the stars, humans fought among themselves for thousands of years. They built weapons that could crack their own planet open. They created artificial intelligence that nearly destroyed them. They engineered plagues that killed billions." He paused, letting that sink in, and then they stopped. They united. They looked at what they'd become and were horrified. So when they joined the Council, they made a choice. To be better. To be the diplomats, the peacekeepers, the ones who extended hands instead of fists. "Then why?" someone started. "But they never forgot what they were capable of," Velmos said softly. "They buried their weapons, hid their war machines, encrypted their military AI and locked it away. They built a civilization of peace on a foundation of protocols designed for extinction-level war. And they prayed they'd never need to remember." The hologram shifted, showing deep space, a section of asteroid field that had been scanned by Council probes just last week. The asteroids were hollow, every single one, and inside each hollow rock was a ship. Thousands of them, sleek, black vessels covered in stealth plating that made them invisible to every sensor the Council had. They'd been there for centuries, dormant, waiting. "Dear gods," someone whispered. "They've been preparing for this since the day they joined us," Velmos said. "Not because they wanted war, but because they'd learned never to be defenseless again. We thought we were stripping power from a weak species. We were really just giving them permission to stop pretending." Somewhere in deep space, far from Council territories, the Terran Defense Fleet assembled. The ships didn't look like typical warships. No bright colors, no proud insignias, no decorative elements meant to intimidate. They were purely functional, angular, black, covered in material that bent light and sensor beams around them. Some were massive, city-sized dreadnoughts with weapons that humanity had sworn never to use. Others were small, barely larger than fighters, but each one carried quantum processors running AI that made Council computers look like children's toys. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the TRNS Remembrance, watching the tactical display. Every ship in the fleet showed green, every system operational, every crew member ready. They'd been ready for 900 years. "Ma'am," her tactical officer reported, "the Council has issued a system-wide alert. They're mobilizing their combined fleet." "How many ships?" "Approximately 3,000 capital vessels. Another 15,000 support craft." Chen smiled. "And how many of those ships still have functioning weapons?" "According to our sabotage teams, about 40%. "Good." Chen turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel. Council-wide broadcast. I want every delegate, every admiral, every politician to hear this." "Channel open, Admiral." Chen took a breath. When she spoke, her voice was calm, measured, and absolutely cold. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet, broadcasting on all Council frequencies. We know you can hear us. We know you're afraid. Good, you should be." She walked to the view screen, looking out at the stars. 72 hours ago, you voted to exterminate humanity. You labeled us cattle. You divided our worlds among yourselves like spoils of war. You did this to the species that saved many of you, protected you, called you friends, her hands clasped behind her back. You made 3 mistakes. First, you assumed we were weak because we chose peace. Second, you forgot that peaceful people are not harmless people. We're simply ones who have reasons not to fight. And third, she paused, you took away our reasons. On the tactical display, more contacts appeared. Human ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel across 50 star systems simultaneously. Not attacking, just appearing, watching, waiting. Here are your options, Chen continued. Option 1. You reinstate humanity's council membership. You publicly apologize. You sign treaties guaranteeing this never happens again, and you provide reparations for the ships and equipment we've had to reveal to make our point. Option 2. You refuse. And we show you what 900 years of suppressed military innovation looks like when we stop holding back. You have 72 hours to decide. The same amount of time you gave us to feel betrayed. She nodded to her communications officer who cut the feed. In the council chamber, the message ended. Nobody spoke. Then Vex Thor laughed. It was a desperate, slightly hysterical sound. This is blackmail, terrorism. We cannot negotiate with. They could have killed us. Counselor Ethera interrupted quietly. Don't you understand? They disabled our weapons, destroyed our defenses, and vanished our ships. But they didn't fire a single shot at a populated world. They didn't target civilians. They're giving us a chance to surrender with dignity. We are the council, Vexthor roared. We do not surrender to. They're not asking us to surrender, Archon Velmos said. They're asking us to be better. The same thing they tried to be for us. He looked around the chamber at the faces of the delegates. Fear, shame, regret. We have a choice to make, Velmos continued. We can admit we were wrong and fix this, or we can let pride destroy us all. Silence. Then Ambassador Krekthar of the Thurkai stood. His forearms trembled. I move to reinstate humanity's council membership, he said, his voice breaking, and to formally apologize for our betrayal. I was wrong. We were all wrong, one by one. Other delegates stood. Second, said Counselor. Ithara. Third, added a Zenthari admiral. Even some who had voted yes, who had helped orchestrate humanity's downfall, rose to their feet because the alternative was too terrible to imagine. Vexthor looked around at the standing delegates. His power was crumbling. His grand plan to eliminate humanity and seize their territories had backfired catastrophically. Finally, he slumped in his chair. Let the record show, he said bitterly, that the council votes to reinstate humanity. All terms accepted. 3 days later, Ambassador Jonathan Jacobs walked back into the council chamber, but this time he wasn't alone. Admiral Chen flanked him on one side. On the other walked representatives from every human colony, every outpost, every world. They wore simple clothing, no military uniforms, no power suits. Just ordinary people who had been marked for death and had survived. The chamber was packed. Every delegation present, every eye watching, Chancellor Vexthor stood at his podium, looking like he'd aged 1,000 years. Ambassador Jacobs, he began, his voice hoarse. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer humanity our deepest apologies for— Stop, Jacobs said quietly. Vexthor fell silent. Jacobs walked to the center of the chamber floor, the same place he'd stood when they'd condemned his species. But now he stood differently. Not pleading, not desperate, equal. We accept your apology, Jacobs said, and we accept reinstatement to the council. But things are going to change. He looked around at the assembled delegates. For 900 years, we tried to be what you needed. Peaceful, cooperative, safe. We suppressed our nature, our history, our capacity for violence because we thought that's what civilization meant. We were wrong. True civilization, Admiral Chen added, stepping forward, isn't the absence of the capacity for violence. It's the choice not to use it. And that choice only means something when you actually have the power you're choosing not to use. From now on, Jacobs continued, humanity will maintain our military, openly. We'll develop our weapons, train our soldiers, and build our defenses. And you're going to accept that. Because you've learned what happens when you try to make us weak. He smiled then, not cruel, but not entirely kind either. But here's the important part. We're also going to keep being your allies. Your friends, your partners in building something better, because despite everything, We still believe in what the Council could be. We still believe in cooperation over conquest, peace over war. We're just never going to be defenseless again." Chen finished. The chamber was silent. Then Archon Velmos began to clap. Slowly, deliberately. Others joined. Not everyone. Some still looked resentful, afraid. But enough to matter. Later, in a private meeting room, Krekthar approached Jacobs. The Thurkai ambassador looked old, defeated. "Jonathan," he said quietly, I don't expect forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. But I needed you to know. You chose your people's future over our friendship," Jacobs interrupted. "I understand. I might have done the same." Krekthar's eyes widened. But understanding doesn't mean forgetting," Jacobs said. His voice was gentle but firm. "It'll be a long time before we trust like we used to. Maybe never. You taught us a valuable lesson about the price of betrayal." He extended his hand. "But we can start again. Carefully. One day at a time." Krekthar stared at the offered hand. Then slowly he clasped it with one of his own. "Thank you," he whispered. Far from the Council station in the depths of space, the Terran fleet began to disperse, ships returning to their hidden stations, their secret facilities, their dormant waiting. But now, everyone knew they were there. Admiral Chen stood on her bridge. "Watching them go, think they'll try again?" her executive officer asked. "Maybe in another few centuries?" Chen shook her head. "No, because now they know the truth." "What truth?" "That humanity's greatest weapon was never our ships or our AI or our hidden fleets." She smiled. "It was always our memory. We remember every kindness, every betrayal, every lesson." She looked out at the stars. "They wanted to make us cattle. Instead, they reminded us we're wolves. Wolves who chose to live among sheep, who chose to protect instead of prey. And now we make sure nobody ever forgets what happens when you try to make the wolves prey again." The remembrance turned toward home, carrying a crew that had proven the oldest human truth. We are capable of terrible things, but we're also capable of choosing better. And sometimes, the second part only matters because of the first. The end in the years that followed, the Council changed. Humanity's display of hidden strength forced other species to be honest about their own capabilities. Treaties were rewritten with real teeth. Peace was maintained not through naive trust, but through mutual respect backed by mutual strength. Ambassador Jacob served another 30 years, always remembering the day he was dragged from the chamber, always carrying the memory of betrayal like a scar, but also remembering the choice humanity made afterward, to be strong enough to be gentle, powerful enough to be kind, and dangerous enough that choosing peace actually meant something. The galaxy learned to call them many things after that, day allies, partners, friends, but never again. Never again did anyone call humanity cattle, because the wolves had shown their teeth and the galaxy finally understood.